And like you said, this is the community that was, this
victimized.
person, they victimized them, and the justice deserves to be felt local, and they have a hand in it. We'll keep it here, but if they don't keep it here, then put them back in the orange seat and treat them like a normal criminal.
Are we chasing convictions or are we pursuing justice? And the answer might shock you because I don't believe we can do both. And the Gonzalez family believes Latah can form an unbiased jury, while at the same time tampering with the potential jury pool. So welcome to The Point. Let's get to it.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
First, I got a comment on my last video on this story where that individual said he can't believe that people assume everything they have on Bryan Kohberger is listed in the PCA, which is a fair point, and if fair coverage and an open conversation is something you prefer, subscribe to this channel and hit that like button down below, because I do believe they have more on Bryan Kohberger. I just don't know what it is, and I am assuming mostly what they have is circumstantial evidence. And a lot like I believe they have more, but know that the probable cause affidavit is weak, you all need to stop acting like this case is open and shut, and stop pretending like the lack of DNA evidence is normal. But is the Gonzalez family tampering with the jury pool, and are they actually seeking justice? Well, let's listen to a couple of clips and break down this article.
Do you think they could find a fair jury here?
We know they can, and we've actually asked and done interviews ourselves.
So now they've conducted their own independent questions with potential jury pools asking them what they know about this case. Does this contaminate the potential jury pool, and what did they say to make me question on if they're seeking justice or a conviction? Legally speaking, of course, they are allowed to speak about the case. They are family members to one of the victims. But at times throughout this story, doesn't it seem like they're dancing in the gray area a little bit? We know that originally the judge put a gag order on everything. He said the defense can't speak, the prosecution can't speak, and anybody with knowledge about the case can't speak. And then the family went before the judge and said that this gag order prevents them from talking, and the judge lightened it up to a degree. And as the judge loosened this gag order a little bit, the family started speaking, and at times they would make statements as if they were true. They would claim to know things that the general public doesn't know. And they would give interviews saying law enforcement told them this or law enforcement told them that. So what they're saying in these interviews is to be considered factual to a degree, right? So what did they ask these potential jurors? And what impact will this have on the jury pool, if any? That is a real legitimate question I don't believe we're going to get the answer for, and you can tell me how you feel about that down in the comments below. We do know the prosecution had a problem with the defense asking questions, so much so that we've had a series of hearings over it. But there's more. Listen to this. The mother, father, and brother of University of Idaho victim Kayla Gonzalez want the trial of the alleged suspect Bryan Kohberger to stay in Moscow, Idaho. Well, of course they want it to stay in Latah. They got home court advantage. I have total faith in the people of this community. They're not biased. They're going to figure it out, Steve Gonzalez told News Nation's Brian Enton on Thursday. So people saying if he walks out of that front door, he's toast or they'll burn the courtroom down. Yeah, that's completely unbiased. Now, of course, is everyone in Latah biased? Probably not. But that's not the problem here. This is the problem. After a long hearing Thursday, Latah County Judge John Judge did not make a decision about whether to move the trial. He said it would be one of the hardest decisions he has to make. Christy Gonzalez doesn't agree. There's definitely people here in this county, in this town, that I would think don't know much about it, she said. There's a lot of people that don't watch TV, they don't come into town, they have farms, they kind of stick to their own. Now, I strongly disagree that this isn't a difficult decision. And I would like to think that the vast majority of y'all would agree with what I just said. We know that there's bias in that town. Let's stop pretending like there isn't bias. But we also know that JJ views the law pertaining to this particular aspect of the trial as squishy. And in my own unprofessional opinion, he's ruled pretty fairly. And I do believe he doesn't want any type of misstep to come back and bite anyone in the butt. That's just my opinion, as I said earlier, but let's get to talking about these farmers. Do you honestly think these individuals want to spend 8 weeks or more in a trial? Of course they don't come to town much, they don't watch TV a lot, and they stay with themselves. Well, that's because they're working 12 to 16-hour days. They are doing work on that farm, whether it's harvesting crops, planting crops, tending to livestock, or processing livestock. Not to count the amount of daily maintenance it takes to run a farm. Those individuals absolutely have a whole lot of stuff to do, and there's probably a large portion of them who are going to do everything they can to get out of this jury. I am absolutely, almost certain, I can promise you that. Allegedly speaking, of course. Now, the Gonzalez family may want a farmer to sit on that jury pool. They may believe that's their optimum person for this particular case. But I can almost guarantee you they're not going to get all that. I highly doubt that the vast majority of these jurors are going to be farmers. And has anybody ever asked the question, why do they want farmers to begin with? Is it because they believe farmers can't follow the science? That they won't listen to the defense? And they won't understand the holes that the defense is trying to put into this particular story? It's a very interesting question at the end of the day, because this is not the first time they've referenced wanting a farmer as a juror. Steve Gonzalez said he understands the arguments behind moving the trial away from Moscow and appreciates the prosecution's arguments to keep it here and keep people from prejudging, and I think they've done a good job. Yeah, they've done their best not to contaminate the potential jury pool, except for the time they've given those official statements swearing up and down Bryan Kohberger did this. This is our guy. We know he did this.
To be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point, because we're not going to release why we think that.
But at the same time, they gave this statement right here.
And there's also the gag order, that's all to keep everything on lock and...
Otherwise, it was pointless.
Yeah.
It was completely pointless.
So wasn't the point of the gag order to stop this potential bias developing in the jury pool?
According to documents, Gray doesn't believe he should have to follow the gag order, and he accused the Latah County prosecutor, Bill Thompson, of leaking information about the case to the media.
So then if the gag order failed, then everybody failed to prevent prejudging. Am I the only one seeing it that way? He's also trying to make peace with Kohberger appearing in court each day in a jacket and tie instead of a county jail jumpsuit. They've done everything they can possibly do to treat him as, I call it, a white-collar crime. This person's attacked 4 people. He should be shackled. This person's done the most horrendous thing. And they're getting treated better than a normal criminal would be, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Once again, what you say carries weight. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's right. It just is what it is. And you were literally right here in this interview swearing Bryan did this and he's getting better treatment than any other criminal. What do you think a potential juror in that county is going to think when they read that? At the very least, something you could do to prevent any type of bias in Latah is use the word allegedly. But you can't speak as if what you're saying is factual on one hand and then turn around and say there's a completely unbiased jury pool in Latah County. Those individuals are following what you're saying. You will be on the news, and the local news will carry that story as well. There's just no getting around it. Kaylee Gonzalez and 3 other University of Idaho students were passed away in their Moscow apartment in November of 2022. A few weeks later, police arrested Bryan Kohberger at his parents' house in Pennsylvania. His trial, be it in Moscow or Boise, is scheduled for next summer. And Christy Gonzalez said the stress is mounting, especially spending so much time in the courtroom sitting so close to Kohberger. I hate it. It's just really hard for me mentally. It's becoming more and more real every court date. It's getting harder for me. But she also said the proximity makes it easy for her to silently confront Kohberger every day in their court. I look at him, especially when he walks in. I look right at him. I'm just waiting for him to look over, make eye contact. Now, we're fair on this channel. I cannot imagine how they're feeling or how they're hurting or what they're going through. And I'll selfishly say that I hope I never do, and I hope none of y'all have to either. But what is my problem with this interview? What makes me question if they're seeking justice or chasing convictions? Well, listen to this. Kaylee's brother, Stephen Gonzalez, also participated in the News Nation interview and spoke for his parents when Enton asked how much the family would react if there was a plea agreement that would spare Kohberger a possible passing sentence. Absolutely not. No, he said. Honestly, after you heard that, tell me how you feel about it. You would get a confession and everyone would know the answers. There would be no more stress, no more waiting, and no more wondering when the wheels of justice are going to turn. But apparently that's not good enough. They want an eye for an eye. They want the DP and they want it now. Honestly, you can't have it both ways. And quite frankly, I don't know and hope I never have to know how I would feel in that particular situation. But tell me what you think about that. I can say that the only way we're going to get the truth and justice is through a fair trial. I can also say that there's a good chance people will lie to get on this jury pool because everyone wants a book deal. Now, I would like to think that a confession would get us justice. After all, life in prison is in a lot of ways worse than the DP. But this last statement is telling, right? This is an open discussion channel where all views are welcome. Please do your own research and form your own opinion. But honestly, why risk it? Think about it like this. You're already traveling back and forth at these hearings. You're already telling people in these interviews that this stress is hard, the waiting is hard, the wheels of justice are moving slow, and you're ready to get this thing to trial. What happens when you have this trial in Latah just to find out somebody lied to get on the jury? You gotta do this whole thing all over again. Why put yourselves through that? Why risk that? I understand that this crime happened in Latah. I understand the idea that that community should be the ones to decide on Brian's guilt or innocence. But the fact is that jury pool is small. That is just the reality of it. And you risk so much having it there. While on the other hand, you can move this trial elsewhere, you can ensure you get a fair jury, and you can only do this once. Why risk going through it twice? I really need somebody to make that make sense to me, and share that down in the comments below. Y'all be safe now.